Intelligence was supposed to set you free. Instead, for a certain kind of mind, it's become the cage. Your achievements don't land. Your wins evaporate into new expectations the moment they arrive. Your satisfaction is always 5 minutes away, and you've learned to call this suffering being awake. You function, you perform, you hit every milestone. Outwardly, you're exactly who the system was designed to reward. But internally, nothing finishes, nothing ever feels complete, no matter what you accomplish. You don't feel dramatically miserable. That would be easier. You just feel like you're watching your own life from behind glass, unable to actually inhabit it. The cruel part is how you've rationalized this. You tell yourself the people who feel satisfied are just sleeping, that your restlessness proves you're still conscious, that your inability to celebrate wins is actually high standards, that you're not broken, you're just too aware for ordinary happiness. But here's the truth. The more options your mind can generate, the more alternate timelines you can imagine, the harder it becomes to rest in the one life you're actually living. Research on maximizers versus satisficers shows this brutally. The people who analyze the most, they enjoy the least. Your intelligence isn't protecting you, it's the thing that keeps stealing every victory before you can feel it. Your mind doesn't feel like a tool, it feels like an engine that never shuts off. It reaches everywhere, it lands nowhere. You can deconstruct your emotions in real time, narrate your patterns, map every decision with theoretical precision, explain everything, but inhabit almost nothing. Jung warned about this. When intellect becomes a shield against the unconscious, becomes a defense against life itself. Awareness without embodiment doesn't deepen you, does something worse. Think about how this plays out in your actual reality. You finish a project, hit a milestone, receive praise. For one brief second, there's warmth. Then your mind arrives. It wasn't difficult, others have done better, the timing was off, the execution imperfect. Perfectionism correlates strongly with higher cognitive ability, and it's devastating. Every victory gets reclassified as provisional evidence, never proof you're allowed to feel complete, not even for an hour. In the absence of what Jung called proper individuation, the intelligent person becomes a specialist in external analysis and a total stranger to internal satisfaction. You absorb the world's chaos through your own relentless perception. Meanwhile, you're emotionally exiled from your own daily life. You track systemic failures, algorithmic trends, your own shortcomings, yet you can't feel your own joy without immediately cross-examining it. You didn't choose this. Intelligence was your survival strategy. If you could anticipate, interpret, stay 3 moves ahead, you might finally feel safe. But here's the cost. Your mind learned to outrun every feeling before it could fully register. Overthinking became a permanent buffer between you and actual experience. This video won't offer consolation. It will expose the exact mechanisms by which your brilliance keeps you restless, unsatisfied, and estranged from your own body and relationships. And what Jung actually discovered about the rare person who stops using intellect as armor and allows it to become integrated, dangerous, alive. Stay with this. What comes next is the turning point. You are not broken, you are overbuilt in one direction. The culture calls this a gift, high IQ, razor-sharp insight. The person who sees patterns others miss, who anticipates outcomes, who optimizes everything. That sounds powerful. Behind that image, though, is a quieter truth. You're trapped in a mind that won't shut off, hyper-analytical, emotionally detached, quietly exhausted by your own perception of everything all the time. Your intelligence looks powerful from outside and feels hollow on the inside. You can explain your trauma, your attachment patterns, your existential dread with clinical precision. Yet nothing moves, nothing changes. Research on rumination proves this. The more verbal and analytical skill you have, the more likely you overthink in circles, converting your life into mental material instead of an experience to be lived. Your problem isn't that you think too much. Your problem is your thinking has become unbalanced, cut off from the parts of you that register satisfaction, body, instinct, emotion, presence. Jung called this one-sided personality development. In the absence of proper individuation, intellect becomes a ruling complex. It colonizes the psyche. Everything, relationships, sensations, even grief, becomes data. You don't live your life, you monitor it. This is where awareness turns against you, not awareness itself. Ungrounded, purely mental awareness is the problem. Intelligence without embodiment, without emotional maturity, becomes internal surveillance that never lets you rest. You watch yourself think, you watch yourself feel, you evaluate every reaction, every desire, every conversation for efficiency, morality, optimization. You become both prisoner and warden. Modern culture rewards this imbalance explicitly. You're praised for productivity, constant self-improvement, maximizing every choice. Studies show maximizers analyze more options and end up less satisfied with all of them. That is you, endlessly refining, never arriving. The system gives you status, money, the illusion of control, but it quietly dismantles your capacity for contentment, connection, meaning. You didn't choose this. You adapted to a world that pays you handsomely for overdeveloped intellect while ignoring what it costs your nervous system. And that cost is enormous. While your mind sharpened, your boundaries with your own body and emotions dissolved. You confuse understanding a feeling with actually feeling it. You can describe love or grief. Your direct experience, though? It's thin, delayed, second-hand. Like the analyst drowning in overthinking, you can't access what lives below constant commentary. Let me redefine intelligence for you, not just processing power, integration. A psyche where thought, sensation, emotion, and instinct operate in dialogue, not exile. In the next sections, we'll map how this one-sided brilliance formed, how it keeps you locked in chronic dissatisfaction, and what Jung actually discovered about the rare person who stops weaponizing their mind and becomes satisfied without dumbing down because they finally brought their whole self back. Your intelligence doesn't feel like a tool. It feels like living 5 steps ahead of your own existence. Your inner world operates as a permanent simulation chamber. The moment you enter a situation, your mind starts scanning. What could go wrong? What could be improved? What angle you haven't considered? You don't arrive, you audit. You're not drinking coffee, you're analyzing your career, your relationships, your trajectory while the cup cools. Cognitive science has a name for part of this: rumination. Not just thinking, repetitive, sticky, verbal overthinking that circles the same problem without ever resolving it. Research is consistent. People high in verbal and analytical ability are more prone to this pattern, and rumination correlates tightly with anxiety, depression, and the chronic sense that life is never quite enough. You don't just have thoughts, you have a 24/7 internal commentator filing reports on everything that could be better. Here's the tempting narrative: you're simply too deep for ordinary happiness. That's one story. Jung offered a different reading. Intellect becomes a defense mechanism, a way to hover above your unconscious so you never have to feel what's actually there. In the absence of proper integration, the analytical mind becomes trapped in loops, flooded with options, unable to digest any of them, confusing constant analysis with mastery. You didn't choose this. The mind that never lands was once a survival adaptation. If you grew up in chaos, you learned to forecast outcomes before they exploded. If you were shamed for mistakes, you learned to mentally rehearse every scenario so you'd never be caught off guard. If uncertainty cut deeply, you trained yourself to pre-scan every situation. Your nervous system encoded one rule: rest equals risk. Relaxation is when you miss the critical detail. But here's the consequence. Even in moments that should feel safe, graduations, promotions, intimacy, simple rest, your perception doesn't soften. You hit a goal, and within seconds your mind benchmarks it against someone else's or dissects how you could have done it faster. You lie down to rest and your body is horizontal, but your awareness is vertical, climbing through contingencies, replaying conversations, drafting future defenses. Emotionally, nothing lands. Achievements feel abstract, like you watch someone else succeed. Connection feels provisional, like a contract under review. Pleasure gets interrupted by a background process, evaluating whether you've optimized it enough. The present never becomes a final destination, it's just a temporary data point in a larger predictive model. This isn't depth. It's a nervous system that's never learned it's safe to arrive, to feel, to stop scanning. And until you confront that directly, your brilliance will keep you exiled from the one place it cannot simulate, the lived experience of enoughness. In the next section, we're going to expose the architecture that keeps that exile in place, and why your standards, your high awareness, may not be what you think they are. This is where your brilliance becomes your enemy. Perfectionism is not having high standards. It's a perceptual loop that makes satisfaction neurologically unavailable. You hit a goal, your system lights up for a moment. Then, almost instantly, that achievement gets reclassified. It stops being extraordinary and becomes baseline, normal, expected. The bar moves, the standard tightens, and what felt impressive last month now feels embarrassingly obvious. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. Your nervous system gets used to things, but in the intelligent perfectionist, adaptation gets supercharged by cognition. You don't just get used to what you've done, you immediately generate superior versions, alternate timelines, more elegant solutions. Your mind auto-upgrades the standard, then punishes you for not already being there. You're living inside a self-updating operating system that never lets the current version be enough. Higher cognitive ability means you can simulate outcomes with precision, compare dozens of options, see subtle flaws in each one. That sounds like power. In the absence of proper individuation, it becomes a trap, because the more possibilities you can see, the more acutely you register what's missing from every single choice you make. You don't just choose a partner, a career, a city. You feel in your body every path you didn't take. Research on maximizers versus satisficers is brutal here. Maximizers analyze more options, gather more data, often end up with objectively better outcomes, higher salaries, more prestigious roles, optimized decisions. Yet they report less satisfaction. Why? Because their perception is haunted by counterfactuals, the imagined alternatives that might have been slightly better. Satisficers choose something good enough and let their nervous system land. The analytical mind can't do this. Your awareness keeps reopening the decision. You call this discernment. Tell yourself, I just don't want to settle. But that's a story you're telling yourself. What Jung actually observed is that when intellect becomes a defense, it fragments you. Part of you hovers outside your own life, evaluating, critiquing, optimizing, while the rest of you carries the weight of never measuring up to a moving ideal that was impossible to begin with. The emotional result is subtle but devastating. From the outside, your life reads as successful. Degrees, promotions, creative output, relational competence. Internally, it feels like a string of almosts. Almost good enough, almost the right fit, almost what you wanted. Nothing is allowed to settle into this is it for now without being immediately cross-examined by a mind trained to find what's missing rather than what's here. But the real cost emerges over time. Your standards shift faster than your nervous system can encode victory. Wins never consolidate into self-worth. They evaporate into new expectations. No amount of intelligence or achievement will touch the deficit because the deficit is structural. And at some level, your psyche unconsciously commits to maintaining this pattern. In the next section, we're going to expose why, what you're actually protecting by never allowing yourself to arrive. And what you're protecting is not a pattern, it's your perception itself. As your intelligence develops, you don't simply get better at solving problems, you get better at seeing through illusions. The social games, the cultural scripts, the shallow goals that are supposed to make a life feel worthwhile. You watch other people believe them, you can't. Instead of feeling free, you feel exiled. You notice how careers become costumes, how relationships become performances, how success often means learning to tolerate a quiet, chronic deadness. This is sold as maturity. Let me show you what actually happens when your awareness outruns your capacity to live with what you see. You don't become enlightened, you become alienated. The party goes on and you stand in the corner, analyzing the music, the lighting, the emergency exits, wondering why no one else seems disturbed. Existential psychology has a term for this: threshold. When you repeatedly confront questions of meaning, death, and purpose, your consciousness deepens, but your daily comfort doesn't automatically follow. Research shows that people who ruminate on mortality and meaning report more depth, more complexity, more sensitivity, but not necessarily more happiness. Awareness expands, safety does not. You begin to grasp that every choice excludes infinite others. Time is finite, no achievement negotiates with death. Before integration, this realization doesn't liberate you, it paralyzes you. You become the existential maximizer, the person who must find the most meaningful job, the most aligned relationship, the most authentic path, all while knowing that every option is compromised by limitation, uncertainty, your own contradictions. You can't relax into good enough because you see every angle where it isn't. This is where Jung enters the picture. He observed that heightened intellect in the absence of proper individuation often becomes a defense against the shadow. The shadow isn't mystical, it's every quality in you and in the collective that consciousness refuses to claim: aggression, envy, shame, dependency, the craving to dominate, the terror of being ordinary. The brilliant mind becomes a specialist in spotting this material everywhere except in its own center. You see the shadow in institutions that preach morality while running on exploitation. You see it in families that preach loyalty while weaponizing guilt. You catch the flash of competitiveness under your support, the resentment under your selflessness. You didn't choose this level of perception. It was a survival adaptation to a reality that didn't feel safe to take at face value. But here's what that cost you. Once you see the emptiness in certain pursuits, you can't unsee it. You see the hollowness of chasing status, the futility of endless productivity, the performative nature of most morality. Yet you may not have built anything deeper to stand on. You're suspended between illusions you can no longer inhabit and meanings you haven't yet embodied. So the dissatisfaction intensifies, not because life has nothing to offer, because you're staring directly at truths you haven't learned to metabolize. The finiteness of time, the inevitability of loss, the reality of your own shadow. The question isn't, is life empty? The question is, what do you do when your mind has outpaced your ability to live with what it knows? In the next section, we're going to confront that gap directly and what it demands from you if you ever want to feel real satisfaction, not just superior analysis. That gap didn't appear in adulthood, it was engineered in childhood. Perhaps you grew up with a parent whose mood controlled the entire atmosphere. Morning could be affectionate, playful, almost safe. By dinner, the same parent was slamming doors, going silent, dissolving into tears. No explanation, no repair. As a sensitive, intelligent child, you did what threat analysts do. You started running constant prediction models. Tone of voice became data. Footsteps in the hallway were an early warning system. The way a fork hit a plate told you whether to speak, disappear, or perform. This wasn't curiosity, it was survival. You learned that if you could read the room before the adults even understood themselves, you might avoid the next explosion. Or maybe your home looked stable from the outside. No obvious trauma, good schools, full fridge, achievement framed on the wall. But emotional reality was absent. Your sadness was overreacting. Your anger was disrespect. Your exhaustion was lack of motivation. What received attention? Your grades, your test scores, your precocious insights. The more brilliant you were, the more approval you got. Your inner world became irrelevant. Or you grew up in a culture or family system where your intensity was too much. Your perception, your analytical depth. They couldn't meet you intellectually, so they praised what was easiest to use. Your capacity to understand, to explain, to solve problems. This child develops what Jung would recognize as hyper-developed thinking deployed as a shield. You didn't choose this. You discovered that if you could map the hidden rules, track inconsistencies, anticipate conflict, and offer solutions, you could buy safety in a system that didn't protect your nervous system or your body. Like a threat analyst reading satellite images, you became exquisitely skilled at detecting danger. But unlike them, no one ever told you, you're off duty, breathe, eat, play. Your mind stayed on patrol 24 hours a day, even when there was no threat. An environment of unpredictability or emotional neglect pushed your cognition into overdrive. That overdrive hardened into identity. Life migrated upward, out of your chest, out of your gut, into your skull. Pleasure became suspicious, rest felt dangerous, simple joy seemed childish or delusional. Your body's signals, hunger, fatigue, desire, contentment, were treated as unreliable compared to the sharp, clean logic of your thoughts. Slowly, you lost the ability to register satisfaction in the present moment because your entire system was calibrated for analysis, not arrival. And now you live with the consequence. You can explain why you're unsatisfied in exquisite detail, but you can't feel the moment when enough has actually been reached. The question is, what happens when that childhood blueprint starts to fracture? When your body refuses to keep obeying a mind that only knows how to scan for danger? In the next section, we confront that mutiny. That mutiny doesn't begin with breakdown, it begins with a vocabulary. You become the modern, intelligent sufferer. You can recite attachment theory like other people quote movies. You know your trauma responses, your inner child wounds, your nervous system states. You can map your childhood like a forensic psychologist, identifying every moment your boundaries were violated, every micro-fracture in your sense of self. On paper, you look enlightened. In your body, you still feel like you're failing at existing. The research is quiet but consistent. The more verbally and analytically skilled you are, the more prone to rumination, endless mental spinning that masquerades as insight while it quietly corrodes satisfaction. You don't just think, you overprocess. You don't just remember, you relitigate. You sit in therapy explaining with surgical precision why you chase emotionally unavailable partners, why you burn out at work, why rest feels dangerous. Then you walk out and do it again. Jung warned about this long before we had language like trauma-informed or attachment-aware. He saw intellect becoming a defense mechanism, not a gift, a way of circling the wound without ever entering it. You tell yourself that if you understand your patterns clearly enough, you'll finally be free. But what Jung actually observed is the opposite. Self-knowledge without integration becomes a labyrinth. You wander through corridors of explanation and never reach the raw, non-negotiable experience of feeling. Your intelligence operates like a moat around your emotional life. You can describe the architecture of your defenses, but you never cross the bridge. The body still tenses when someone gets close. Your jaw still locks when conflict appears. Your chest still hollows out when a message is left unread. You can say, "I'm avoidant," or "I'm anxious," preoccupied. But the statement sits there, a clinical label pinned to a living animal that continues to thrash. This is where emotional spectatorship takes hold. You don't inhabit your life, you observe it. You watch your reactions as if you were your own therapist, narrating in real time. "Ah, that's my fawn response. There's my fear of abandonment. Here comes my shutdown." Instead of crying, you comment on the fact that you could cry. Instead of raging, you analyze why rage feels unsafe. Reality becomes slightly two-dimensional, like you're half a step to the side of your own existence. The analytical mind becomes a chronic commentator on inner experience, not a participant in it. You didn't choose this. It was a survival adaptation in a system that punished raw emotion and rewarded composure, insight, control. But here's what that cost you. Satisfaction remains theoretical. Joy feels like a concept, not a climate. Connection becomes something you can define, but not fully metabolize. So if you can understand your pain with such clarity and still not move beyond it, what exactly is your intelligence serving, and what part of you is it quietly protecting from real life? Your intelligence isn't neutral here. It already signed a contract, you just don't remember when. In the absence of proper individuation, the gifted child doesn't simply become smart, they become hyper-responsible for reality itself. Somewhere between the first disappointment and the first betrayal, you made an internal vow. I will never be naive. I will never be blindsided. I will never settle. That vow became law. Your nervous system has been enforcing it ever since. So satisfaction doesn't land as safety, it lands as threat. The word satisfied doesn't feel like wholeness. It feels like becoming dull, complacent, half awake. Like falling asleep at the wheel of consciousness while everyone else is already driving blind. Your perception is weaponized against rest. The moment life becomes okay for more than a few hours, your mind initiates a scan. What's missing? What's inefficient? What danger hasn't been mapped? Research on maximizers shows that the more options you can analyze, the less satisfied you feel with any choice. Your mind uses that capacity as a surveillance system. Dissatisfaction becomes your superstition against chaos. As long as you're restless, you're prepared. But you've quietly tied safety to tension. You've equated being on edge with being awake. The analytical mind does this relentlessly. You keep yourself slightly disappointed, slightly outraged, slightly above it all, because the alternative feels like psychological death. Like joining a collective sleepwalk you've sworn to resist. Over time, this hardens into identity. You're the one who sees more, thinks more, understands more, not just cognitively, but morally. You're the person who can't just be happy with a simple life, who dissects cultural narratives, who refuses easy answers. Here's the shadow. When seeing more becomes your primary virtue, contentment starts to look like betrayal. If you allow yourself to enjoy an ordinary day, to love something imperfect, to stop scanning for the flaw, it feels like abandoning your post. But what if satisfaction is not the enemy of awareness? What if it's awareness that's finally matured? Jung warned that intellect without integration leads to neurosis, not depth. True satisfaction for an intelligent person is not the absence of perception. It's perception that's descended into your body, into your breath, into direct contact with reality. You don't become less awake, you become less exiled from your own experience. And this is where the contract begins to crack. When you realize you can remain sharply conscious of the world's incompleteness without making chronic dissatisfaction your only proof that you're still alive. And now your mind reveals its second function. It doesn't just perceive, it polices. Jung called it the shadow, the constellation of traits, impulses, and needs you had to disown to maintain your image of yourself. For the intelligent person, that image is razor sharp. You are competent, self-reliant, rational, above the mess of ordinary human dependency. Anything threatening that identity gets pushed down and labeled dangerous. Because what Jung observed is that the shadow doesn't disappear. It reorganizes, it becomes an internal prisoner population guarded by your own brilliance. Neediness, dependency, vulnerability, irrational joy, unproductive rest, the part of you that wants to waste an afternoon doing nothing, that wants to cry on someone's shoulder, that wants to dance without optimizing heart rate variability. All of that is quietly despised by the persona of the intelligent adult. Your mind operates like a strict supervisor. It monitors your impulses and issues constant disciplinary reports. You reach for simple pleasure and a voice says, "This is beneath you." You feel the ache to be held and it whispers, "You should be past this." Grief arises, rage flares, longing stretches towards someone who might not choose you back, and the supervisor calls it irrational, dramatic, weak. Your analytical capacity weaponizes itself against your own spontaneity. On one side, the brilliant analyst, articulate, self-aware, endlessly capable of explaining why you are, the way you are. On the other, a banished, childlike self that still longs for play, comfort, unconditional acceptance. That younger self wants to lie on the floor and listen to music, to be silly, to be wrong, to be held without having to earn it. Your intelligence allies with the parent, not the child. It becomes the enforcer of old rules, not the liberator of new life. Research on rumination shows that higher verbal and analytical capacity often amplifies this regime. You can argue yourself out of every spontaneous impulse. Construct airtight reasons why rest is laziness, why pleasure is distraction, why grief is self-indulgent. But the consequence is clear. The shadow is where most of the raw material of satisfaction lives: connection, spontaneity, sensuality, emotional intensity. By exiling those, you starve your nervous system of the nutrients that generate aliveness. You build a life you can respect on paper: impressive work, clean logic, high standards. But your body doesn't exhale inside it. Your nights are filled with low-level restlessness, with the sense that you're adjacent to your own existence, studying it rather than inhabiting it. What if the life your mind admires and the life your body and soul can actually enjoy are not the same life? And what if your refusal to admit that gap is the real prison? In the next part, we're going to walk directly into that gap and ask what it would cost and what it would give you to stop guarding the door. When you refuse to walk through that gap, something else begins to happen. Your inner world expands, your outer world contracts. This is the quiet social illusion of high intelligence. You assume your growing perception will connect you more deeply to people. In reality, it often separates you from them. As your insight sharpens, you start to see through the rituals that hold most relationships together. Small talk, office politics, cultural scripts. You can predict the joke, the complaint, the performance before it lands. What looks to others like normal life feels to you like a pre-written play that everyone agreed to act out without reading the contract. This feels like evidence that you're simply ahead of the collective. You tell yourself you're too awake for triviality, too perceptive for casual interaction. That's one story. Underneath the disdain is something more fragile: exhaustion. Ordinary conversations drain you not because you're superior, but because you can't stop tracking the subtext. The micro-tensions, the patterns everyone is leaking while pretending they're fine. So you withdraw, not dramatically, incrementally. You answer, but you don't reveal. You listen, but you don't let yourself need. You stay in the group chat, the meeting, the family gathering, but you participate from a distance. Like an anthropologist studying a familiar tribe, the room experiences you as present. Internally, you're already gone. You didn't choose this, your nervous system learned that being fully engaged means being perpetually understimulated and perpetually misunderstood. The gifted analyst who can read a room in 60 seconds notices the forced laugh in the corner, the power play in the joke, the resentment behind the compliment. That they can anticipate outcomes so accurately that surprise becomes rare. With it, a certain kind of innocence disappears. Life starts to feel overexposed, like a movie you've already seen 3 times. You know the twist, you know who betrays whom, you know who will never apologize. The cost of this predictive perception is that wonder, spontaneity, genuine curiosity become endangered experiences. You crave depth, realness, unedited contact. Yet your own hyper-analysis makes it almost impossible to relax into the messy, contradictory, sometimes shallow reality of human connection. You judge others for skating on the surface while secretly envying their ability to laugh at a bad show, enjoy an average party, believe in a relationship without dissecting it to death. Your intellect becomes a boundary and a prison at the same time. Each time you curate away what feels unrefined, you remove one more doorway back into your own life. Your world grows more controlled, more correct, more intellectually coherent, and emotionally emptier. If you keep going this way, the only people left in your reality will be your thoughts, and your thoughts are about to meet something they can't out-analyze, because clinically this pattern is already well documented. Therapists across disciplines report the same client type: intelligent, articulate, apparently stable. No major trauma history they can easily identify. No clear-cut diagnosis that explains the weight they carry. Yet when the door closes, what emerges is consistent language: emptiness, restlessness, a flat inability to feel satisfied by a life that on paper looks functional. You are not an anomaly, you are a category. In the consulting room, they call this high functioning. But that label is dangerously incomplete. You maintain a career, pay bills, remember birthdays, reply to emails, you perform competence. Internally, though, you're watching your own existence through glass, close enough to observe every detail, too distant to be penetrated by anything. Experiences register as data points, not as something that lands in your body. But if you're this functional, you shouldn't be this unhappy. That's what you tell yourself. Yet that belief is clinically inaccurate. Functioning simply means you can keep the system running. It says nothing about whether you feel alive inside it. Many of the most distressed clients never miss a deadline. They simply no longer know how to inhabit their own days. Jung saw this pattern repeatedly. Highly mental, highly capable people who weren't collapsing into psychosis or dramatic breakdowns. People who were, in his words, over-identified with the intellect. Their perception narrowed around thinking as the only trustworthy faculty. Feelings became suspicious, the body became an inconvenient machine. The unconscious was treated as an error message rather than a source of neglected material. Your mind operates like it's circulating the era's hopelessness about meaning, the culture's exhaustion, the system's demand for endless optimization. You don't just think your own thoughts, you become porous to it. You didn't choose this. Your intelligence made you susceptible to it. Look at what gets pushed into your shadow. Aggression that could defend your boundaries gets denied, then turned inward as precision-grade self-criticism. Desire and sensuality are repressed because they threaten your controlled image, so pleasure starts to feel vaguely dangerous. Shame accumulates around being too much when you're intense and not enough when you're tired. Beneath it all is a quiet grief for a life that never quite feels inhabited. No matter how much you achieve, you will misdiagnose this as a personal defect, as proof you're fundamentally incapable of happiness. Reality check. This isn't moral failure. It's a predictable outcome of a culture that worships cognition and productivity while neglecting integration and embodiment. The problem isn't that you think too much. It's that your thinking has been forced to operate alone. In the next part, you'll see what happens when your body, your emotions, and your unconscious finally refuse that arrangement. Your body, your emotions, your unconscious refuse the arrangement. And your mind does what it always does. It tries to manage the revolt by thinking harder. Let me show you where that ends. Consider the impact of spending years like this, every feeling monitored, every impulse evaluated, every decision cross-examined. You don't have experiences, you run commentary on them like a permanent inner panel of experts dissecting your own life. At first, it looks like maturity. Feels responsible, self-aware, advanced. But while your perception sharpened, your center dissolved, beneath all that commentary, who is the one that actually wants, chooses, enjoys? When you reach for that answer, there's a strange blankness, or a swarm of conflicting voices that all sound equally intelligent and equally plausible. You can explain your attachment patterns, your trauma responses, your family system in exquisite detail. But if I ask you right now, well, what do you genuinely want to do with this 1 hour of your life? The response isn't clarity, it's hesitation, negotiation, debate. This is the core paradox. You can read others' behavior, patterns and motivations with precision. You sense dynamics and tensions others miss. You see the shadow in collective systems long before they see it in themselves. But when you turn that same gaze inward and ask, what do I love? What do I believe? What actually feels good in my body? The signal collapses into noise. Your analytical mind becomes an expert on external patterns and a stranger to internal reality. Your mind becomes a sophisticated analytical instrument, finely tuned, clinically precise, but it's never allowed to simply be the subject. It's either aimed outward, scanning for threats and opportunities, or turned on itself as an object of endless analysis. You watch yourself think, you audit every reaction, you run simulations of conversations that haven't happened yet. Your identity becomes borrowed. You take it from roles: high performer, reliable friend, problem solver. You take it from achievements, grades, titles, creative output. You take it from how others perceive your intelligence and analytical skill. But when those external markers arrive, they don't land. Satisfaction slides off because there is no solid I for it to attach to, only a moving configuration of roles trying to pass for a person. This is why no amount of success feels like enough. It isn't that the goals are wrong, it's that the one pursuing them feels unstable, contingent, conditional. You didn't choose this, your system adapted this way for survival, in environments that rewarded analysis over embodiment, compliance over boundaries, cognition over contact with your own reality. And this is the turning point, because the way out is not another framework, not a more elegant theory of your shadow, not deeper surveillance of your every thought. The shift is from using your intelligence as a watchtower to using it as a tool in service of a deeper, more embodied center of gravity. In the next section, we'll start to name what that center actually is and what it demands you stop doing with your mind. So let's name the fear directly. You don't resist satisfaction because you love suffering. You resist it because you equate it with becoming dull. For the intelligent mind, satisfaction has been framed as naivety, complacency, a soft focus filter over a brutal reality. You imagine that if you ever actually felt content, you would stop seeing the cracks in the system, stop detecting the shadow in people's motives, stop sharpening your perception. It lets you worship your restlessness as proof that you're still awake. Let me show you a different frame. A satisfied, intelligent person is not someone who stops seeing complexity or darkness. It is someone whose nervous system can hold that complexity without collapsing into cynicism, hypervigilance, or endless agitation. In Jungian terms, satisfaction here is not repression, it is integration. You don't blindfold yourself to the unconscious. You stop letting unprocessed material run your entire inner climate. The analytical mind uses intelligence as a shield against helplessness. You overanalyze every relationship, every decision, every future scenario, because on some level, your survival once depended on anticipating threat. Research on rumination shows that higher verbal and analytical skill often means more overthinking, not less. But while your perception sharpened, your capacity to register enough atrophied, your mind escalated, your ability to land disappeared. Integrated satisfaction looks different. It means you can actually feel your achievements in your body instead of instantly converting them into new standards. You finish a project and for a moment you let the reality sink in. You did that. It means you can savor small pleasures, a conversation, a piece of music, a quiet evening, without needing them to be perfect or profound. You allow relationships to be flawed, human, occasionally disappointing, and still deeply meaningful, while your intellect stays fully online, tracking patterns without turning every imperfection into a verdict on reality. In the absence of proper individuation, intelligence masquerades as destiny. This is just how my mind works. I can't be satisfied. That is not destiny. That is untrained energy. Satisfaction for you is not a default state, it is a discipline. It is advanced training in nervous system regulation, in renegotiating unconscious contracts that say, if I relax, I'll miss the danger, and in rebalancing inner power so that the watchtower serves the center, not the other way around. You didn't choose this pattern, but you can choose what happens next. The next phase of this work will not ask you to become less intelligent, less critical, or less aware of systemic problems. It will ask you to become more sovereign over where and how your intelligence is used, so it stops devouring your capacity for joy and begins protecting it instead. And to do that, you will have to confront one internal rule your mind has never allowed you to question. That internal rule is simple, brutal, and invisible. If I am not constantly thinking, I am not safe. Your intelligence is organized entirely around this command. Your mind behaves like a surveillance system, not a companion. It scans, predicts, criticizes, runs simulations of every possible failure. This kept you alive in environments where missing a detail meant emotional or physical impact. But it made stillness feel dangerous. It made satisfaction feel like negligence. The first pivot is this: you move from automatic analysis to conscious choice. You stop assuming that every thought your mind produces is necessary. You begin to notice, in real time, when your perception narrows into threat mode, when you're replaying a conversation, optimizing a plan, pre-writing an argument that hasn't even happened. And you ask one decisive question: is this actually serving me right now? That question is not rhetorical. It's a blade. It cuts through the trance of overthinking and exposes it as optional, not inevitable. Jung would call this the beginning of psychological sovereignty. Plain reality, you are no longer fused with the stream of thought. You recognize that your mind is a powerful tool, but you are not identical with it. There is a deeper you that can decide when to think, when to feel, and when to simply be. The analytical mind mistakes hypervigilant cognition for identity itself. I think, therefore, I am safe. But that's a story. Let me show you what sovereignty looks like in practice. Time-boxed thinking. Instead of ruminating for hours, you give your intelligence a clear container, 15 minutes, to analyze the problem, write options, make a decision. When the window closes, thinking stops not because the problem is solved, but because you decided that endless analysis is no longer the governing system of your life. Your mind hates this at first. It panics. It tells you you're being irresponsible. You are not. You are retraining authority. Second practice, embodied check-ins. Before you interpret, you locate jaw, chest, stomach, throat. You ask, what is happening in the body before the story? Research on rumination shows that high verbal and analytical skill amplifies anxiety when it's disconnected from sensation. You reverse that split, sensation first, narrative second. Sometimes you discover that what you called boredom is actually exhaustion, or that your disappointment is unprocessed anger. Shadow material that thinking alone could never metabolize. Third, intentional, unoptimized experiences. You do things with no goal of improvement. You walk without tracking steps. You read without highlighting. You sit with a friend and refuse to turn the conversation into a diagnostic seminar on systemic problems. The point is to feel, not to upgrade. Why does this matter for satisfaction? Because when the mind is no longer on permanent guard duty, the nervous system can finally register safety. Only then can moments of contentment, pleasure, and connection sink in as real experiences, not data points to be dissected. Integration means your intelligence stops devouring your life and starts defending it. The most advanced use of intelligence is not endless refinement of thought. It is the capacity to direct and limit thinking in service of a richer, more textured reality. In the next phase, you'll see what happens when this sovereignty meets your shadow and why that union is where genuine power begins. Sovereign thinking is not enough if the kingdom ends at your neck. You've been taught that the goal is a clear mind, a sharp model of reality, a perfectly optimized system of choices. Satisfaction is not an idea you convince yourself of. It is a physiological event. Highly intelligent people treat the body like a maintenance project. Sleep, nutrition, exercise, posture, inputs to keep the brain online so it can keep solving. The body becomes a vehicle for cognition, a problem to manage, or an obstacle that keeps getting in the way of productivity. Let me show you what that cost you. When the body is reduced to hardware and the mind is worshipped as software, you amputate your primary instrument for detecting what actually feels good, safe, and right. In Jung's terms, the body becomes part of the shadow. Not because it is dark, but because it is disowned. You override hunger with deadlines, override exhaustion with caffeine, override dread with rationalization. You can explain burnout, loneliness, and meaninglessness with eloquent psychological material, yet your shoulders are welded to your ears, your jaw is locked, and your breath never fully lands. You don't lack insight. You lack access to the physiological state of enough. Satisfaction is not a conclusion. It is a nervous system configuration, muscles unclenching, breath deepening, a subtle spreading warmth in the chest or belly, a loosening of compulsive scanning for the next improvement. Research on maximizers shows that more analysis often correlates with less contentment. Your mind keeps searching because your body has never received the signal that you have arrived anywhere. This is where embodiment stops being optional. Slow sensory experiences without multitasking are not self-indulgent. They are acts of integration. Drinking coffee while only drinking coffee. Walking without a podcast. Letting water hit your skin in the shower and tracking in real time the micro moments of "this feels good" instead of instantly planning your day. The analytical precision you use externally must now be turned inward. Begin to notice how your body responds to people, work, and environments before you argue with it. The tightening in your gut around a particular colleague. The heavy, drained sensation after scrolling. The grounded, expansive quiet with one specific friend. This is not woo, it is data. Your perception has been trained on patterns and problems. Now it must be trained on your own organism. What Jung actually observed was that real integration is triadic. Mind, body, and emotion operate together, not as warring factions. Intellect stops dismissing instinct as primitive. Instinct stops sabotaging intellect out of accumulated resentment. Emotion stops hijacking both in a desperate attempt to be felt. Decisions begin to emerge from the overlap of all three, rather than from a disembodied, over-caffeinated cortex trying to dominate the entire system. In the absence of proper individuation, your goals, relationships, and metrics of success were chosen from the neck up. As your body comes back online, many of them will start to feel wrong in a way you can't easily refute. Careers that once looked impressive will feel cold. Relationships that were fine on paper will register as subtly threatening. The metrics you've used to prove your worth will stop producing any real internal shift. That dissonance is not failure, it is the first tremor of realignment. In the next phase, you'll see what happens when this embodied intelligence collides with your shadow, and why the life you've built to impress your mind may not survive your full return to yourself. When this collision with your shadow doesn't annihilate you, something unexpected happens. The mind that once ran the entire system is forced to share power. And the person you become on the other side is not softer, not dulled, but finally aligned. Your intelligence once functioned like a searchlight that never turned off. It scanned for errors, hypocrisies, dangers, and inefficiencies in everything, especially in you. After integration, that same light acquires a switch. Your inner experience is no longer a courtroom, it becomes a house you can actually live in. The mind quiets not because it lost depth, but because it no longer has to compulsively dissect reality to guarantee survival. You can still think at terrifying speed. You can still model outcomes, analyze dynamics, anticipate failure modes. But you do it on purpose, not as a reflex. There are evenings now where you read a novel without pulling it apart, where you drink coffee without turning it into an existential referendum. Your body stops being an inconvenient transport device for your brain and starts to feel like home. Shoulders unclenched, breath deeper, subtle pleasures registering as data you actually trust. Emotion, which you previously treated as contamination, becomes information. You feel anger rise and you don't immediately pathologize it as immaturity. You feel grief and you don't convert it into theory. You let it move through, shape your decisions, and then complete. This is what Jung actually observed. Satisfaction is not the absence of conflict, but the capacity to metabolize inner contradictions without having to exile half of yourself. Relationally, the integrated intelligent person stops hovering above human life as a permanent critic. You can sit in a kitchen and talk about someone's terrible day at work without needing to elevate the conversation into a seminar on systemic failure. Small talk stops being a threat to your depth and becomes a doorway, a way to signal safety, to attune, to earn the right to go deeper when it's actually welcome. You no longer need every interaction to validate your complexity. You let people be unfinished, inconsistent, ordinary. You can laugh at a trivial meme, listen to a meandering story, go to a mediocre party, and still feel intact. The part of you that once over-analyzed every micro-expression and social dynamic is replaced by a clear sense of boundaries, what is yours to hold and what can fall to the floor without you rushing to catch it. Your relationship to achievement also transforms. You still pursue excellence. You still care about precision, rigor, and impact. But wins finally land. A finished project doesn't immediately dissolve into what you should have done better. It produces a real, somatic exhale. You allow yourself to feel pride without instantly calling it complacency. Completion becomes an experience in your body, not just a line item your mind erases as soon as it's checked. Instead of endlessly maximizing, you learn to satisfy. Not by lowering standards into mediocrity, but by actually registering enough as a valid state. Satisfaction equals stagnation is the lie you've been sold. In reality, satisfaction is what lets you build sustainably because you're no longer running from an internal executioner. Your stance toward the world becomes more paradoxical and more sane. You still see the absurdity, the injustice, the violence baked into our collective systems. You still feel the ache of unrealized potential, yours and everyone else's. But you are no longer defined by critique. Your intelligence orients toward creation and contribution, writing the policy instead of only mocking it, building the company instead of only diagnosing its failures, showing up for the one person in front of you instead of drowning in abstract concerns for the collective. You hold both darkness and beauty without collapsing into either. You can read about ecological collapse in the morning and still watch the sunset in the evening without accusing yourself of denial. You understand that your nervous system was never designed to carry the entire world's burden as proof of your moral seriousness. Your intellect is no longer a defense against your own unconscious. Now it's reseated as one function among many, powerful, respected, but no longer a tyrant. The shadow is not eradicated, it's known. You're familiar with your envy, your aggression, your hunger for recognition, so they stop hijacking your decisions from behind the scenes. Satisfaction in this state is not naive. It is a hard-won, conscious choice you make daily to inhabit this particular life, in this particular body, with these particular limits. Some mornings, the old restlessness still whispers that you're behind, that you should be more, know more, do more. You didn't choose this voice, but you choose what you do with it now. Because here is the final shift. The measure of your intelligence is no longer how brutally you can dismantle reality, but how precisely you can participate in it without disappearing. And when that participation is threatened, when old patterns surge back and your mind tries to reclaim the throne, you'll face a decision that most smart people never consciously recognize they're making. That decision is simple to name and brutally hard to live. Will you keep worshipping dissatisfaction as evidence of your superiority, or will you let yourself arrive without betraying your intelligence? You've been told that your restlessness means you're meant for more. In reality, your chronic inability to feel done is the predictable outcome of an overdeveloped, unintegrated intelligence, a mind that learned, in the name of survival, to protect you by never letting you land anywhere that could be taken away. The intelligent person functions like someone flooded with perception but starved of satisfaction. You see patterns, contradictions, systemic failures. You can explain your childhood, your trauma, the world's complexities, but while your analytic power sharpened, your capacity to inhabit a single moment without immediately dissecting it dissolved. So the first shift we walked through was redefining satisfaction, not as permanent comfort, not as the end of growth, but as the ability to fully occupy the reality you've already bled to create. satisfaction as participation, not paralysis. Then we broke the unconscious contract that equates contentment with mediocrity. The internal agreement that says, if I ever feel enough, I will stop being exceptional. Even though you know logically that this is false. From there, we turned your mind from prison guard into steward, same intelligence, different job description. Instead of scanning relentlessly for what's missing, it begins to ask, what is already here that I refuse to metabolize? You re-invite the body and emotions into decision-making, not as irrational enemies of reason, but as the missing data your nervous system has been exiling for decades. Now your experiment, 1 week, choose one small area of life and deliberately allow good enough to be enough. Not theoretically, operationally. Send the email without perfecting every line. Cook the simple meal instead of researching the optimal diet. Stop at this works instead of this annihilates all conceivable alternatives. Then watch, in forensic detail, what your mind does in response. Does it catastrophize, accuse you of laziness, whisper that you're becoming average? Here's what Jung actually observed about change. In the absence of proper individuation, insight alone doesn't transform you, it just refines your self-torture. The real mark of advanced intelligence is no longer how much you can analyze, but how fully you can live what you already know, how bravely you let your insights reshape your nervous system, your relationships, your daily choices. So, stay with this. Re-watch this video and journal on one question. Where do I treat dissatisfaction as proof that I'm special? Watch the related videos on integration and embodiment. And if you're ready to stop using your mind as a hiding place and start using it as a bridge back into your own life, subscribe, stay in this conversation, and keep practicing arrival, imperfect, uncomfortable, and finally, real.